Postcards from the bottom. It seemed like it worked. But last time I did that test, the test was perfect, and then the video was all messed up. It sounded like I was being suffocated. So I'm going to try this very briefly, tell you guys a story. When I was in my 20s, I think I've told many of you, if you just joined, then you might not have heard, I moved back to California in my 20s. I wanted to, number one, part of the reason why I left was because my long-term boyfriend and I broke up, and I didn't think it would be a good idea for me to be seeing him moving on, like, in my eyeballs, because I would have, like, died right there on the spot. But I always had wanted to go back to LA, and I figured this was the time to do it. You know, I wouldn't have to watch Jordan doing, you know, moving on or dating other girls, which would kill me. And I wanted to go back there anyway. There were things I didn't pursue that you know, obviously I didn't complete things when I was younger. But in a sense, I wouldn't have wanted to complete it on the path I was on, because I do think it's very hard for child actors to make that transition. And I would have been stuck there. You know, I would have always been seen as this character or that character if I was a child actress. Of course, it would have been great anyway, but, you know, I had a lot of roles, but not the ones that, like, you know, the sleepers, like, you know, where somebody gets a role in something and they're just made because of that role. But anyway, so I had gone back, but at that time, I didn't know anyone. I knew the people I used to know, but I didn't want to, you know, put them under the pressure of being like, oh, I'm here, you know, you need to do something for me, you know, because it doesn't work like that in that business. It's like, when was the last time, you know, you made them money? That's all they care about. And when they look at you, you know, if you haven't made them money, they want to know, you know, they want to see immediately, what about you, when you walk in that door, is going to be different than everybody else. And if you don't look, like, magnificently, you're not going to get noticed in LA. It's just the way it is. You know, not that comedians don't make it. They do. But it's a different road. It seems like more of it's a very tough road. And there are so many millions of actors and actresses that are so talented and don't fit into this look or that look that at the time they're saying is the only look they're going for. You know, so many times. And the other thing is that actors and actresses come to LA, you know, and you hear the term starving artist, because they can't get, you know, they can't get even into auditions. It's not even about getting turned away and someone saying, oh, you're not a good actor, goodbye. You don't even really, most of the time, get that chance. You could be there forever and never get a chance to even go up in front of an agent or anybody else to even say, oh, you suck, goodbye. You know, you don't even know, you don't even get to hear that a lot of the times. You either have to know someone or, you know, by some stroke of luck, you're in the right place at the right time, but it's really very rare that it happens that way. Other than that, you know, every once in a while, you know, agents and casting directors will go out to shows to try and find new talent, but most of the time, you know, they stick with the names that they know, people who have a box office draw. They're not really looking for newcomers. So the business is really all about people that are already working. You know, the up-and-comers are most of the time used for free work like slaves on the, you know, on the sets and things like that. And also, a lot of us did extra work where you spend the entire day, and you would have to stay to all hours. It didn't make a difference, whatever they said. Either you're standing in the cold or the rain. I've done all of that. In the movie Fame, I was in the movie Wolfen, you know, back in the 70s. You know, there were a lot of movies that, you know, people in the background, when you see people walking, those are called extra actors. And you could be a person who just does that, and you make $100 every time you go, you know, spend the whole day on the set being an extra. But it is a lot of work all day and night, whatever it is. And, you know, you don't make a name for yourself that way. Some extras think that they can get noticed on the set, and maybe they can. I don't know. As far as I've not seen that. It's really a very tough business. You know, you have to be very social, and you have to be a schmoozer. It's all part of it. You know, you can't just be an actor who isolates, because then who's going to find you? You know, someone like myself, you know, was never going to really have that much of a shot through another doorway, because I didn't really like to go out to bars, and I wasn't like, hey, what are you doing? What's your name? Who do you know? What do you do? You know, and that was always the first question in LA, and people were at these big parties, but everybody was really there to, you know, meet somebody else and see what they could do for them. Not that they didn't make friends, but everybody was there because they wanted to be in that business. And it's crazy because when you go there, just like in the town I'm living in, there's like 2 main industries or 3 main industries, you know, in LA, it's mostly that business. You know, you're not going to find that many, you know, a big population of stockbrokers and this, that, and the other thing. It's all entertainment related. Like in DC, it's mostly political and things like that related to those jobs and stuff like that. So anyway, long story short, so I went to LA not knowing anybody. I didn't know anyone at all. In fact, I could have called those people, but I didn't want to. I wanted to set myself up first. I landed at first in Westwood, which was a beautiful area. I didn't know where I was going. I was supposed to stay at my brother's friend Sandra's house, Sandra Doneth, who was always very nice in high school, but my brother and her were friends. I think she used to have a crush on my brother, whatever it was. They were very close. And they were like brother and sister, supposedly. He was very close with her family. So when she heard that I was coming to LA and didn't know where I was going to move yet, because he had called her or she called him, she said, let your sister come and stay with me for a week while she looks for a place, and she was looking to say something nice to my brother. And he was like, oh, well, that's great, great idea. So I called her up and I made these plans to come out there, and I was going to stay at her apartment for a week or 2 weeks, whatever she said, and find a place while I was there and then move into my place. At least I would have some place to land. I would have been nervous if I didn't have any place because I didn't know anyone. Where the hell was I going? I didn't really even have any money, really, that much. So I landed there. I rented a car. I had no idea where I was going. And I asked for directions, and I made it to, Beverly Hills. And I found her apartment building. And I had spoken to her before. My brother spoke to her before. Everything was late. She was there. So I buzzed the buzzer. And she answered the buzzer. Hello, who is it? I said, it's Jessica. I'm here. She goes, okay, I'll be right down. She never came down. Never. I waited there for so long, and I called back. It was humiliating. Obviously, I wouldn't have gone there if I had known that. So, anyway, I was so upset. I was crying. I called my brother. She purposely didn't answer the door, and fucked me over in that way, which was terrible. Because I didn't know where I was going. I could have been in a bad area. And many times I was. When you don't know where you're going, you become like a target. So, I found a motel or hotel. And I stayed at that hotel, and I found a place to live. And, at some point I was living in West Hollywood. I'll tell you that story later about Westwood. I really didn't have any friends in Westwood when I first got there. I got a cat from the shelter, but that was it. I didn't really have any friends. There was one guy I knew in the building, but he was just like a funny guy that I knew. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I got spinal meningitis, which was weird. And they were wondering what was wrong with me, because how do you just get that? Normally you get it from someone else, but I wasn't around anybody else. I wasn't dating. I didn't have any friends or anything. I ended up going home because I almost died, and I was so scared. And I ended up coming back again, living in West Hollywood and setting myself up there and trying to find out what is the best acting school. Because when I look back at my acting tapes, I was always embarrassed of my acting. It was so bad. It was so over the top. And maybe at that time, kids acted like that. But we were more, inclined towards stage and towards acting to the back of the house. So everything was very big. You wouldn't just be like, hey, Mom, what's up? You would be like, hey, Mom, what's up? Because your mom was all the way, you had to hit those people in the back of the audience. They have to hear you too. And at that time, we didn't have the same mics they have now, where they were around your neck and around your ear. We just had them on the stage floor, so we really had to sing loudly. Everything had to be heard in the back. So I was trained really more of a stage actress. And I think I had a hard time, obviously, as a kid, with that transition, because when I would watch myself, I was always overacting, which drives me insane, about children actors. And it's not that it's such a bad thing, it's just, it reminds me of that whole lifestyle growing up in that business, and the mothers and the stage mothers and the whole, everything was so contrived and not real. And I remember Martin Charnin, who I spoke about, who recently passed away, a legend, okay? He basically wrote all the lyrics from Annie and the music, and he was incredible. He was like a god to us. He used to come by and watch the kids in the show, and he didn't pull any punches. He would say, you guys look like robots. You look like, mechanical. He kept saying mechanical. And I remember hearing that over and over again with the kids, and even with myself when I was even younger, before I got the part in Annie and went on the road and everything, and then to LA. I was before that when I just loved the business. And I went to Stage Door Manor, an acting school. And they were teaching me how to deliver the song. And when I was singing this song, it was always a ballad that I was singing, because it, the casting directors and people like that always wanted me to sing something where I could belt the notes or whatever, like circus tricks, which I hate. And so it becomes like a sport where it's all about the sport of singing loud or doing this, these kids. And there's no feeling, zero. So it's like you're watching them and you know that they don't feel any of the song. It just somehow, for me, it ruins it. I can't really have the experience that the character is having while I'm sitting in the audience, and feel that, or when the acting is so bad, or it just ruins everything. It takes you back to not the story, it takes you away from that. You start thinking about the actor, which is a bad sign. If you've ever seen that in a movie, you know what I'm talking about. Where there's no chemistry between two actors, or one actor is so bad it ruins the whole movie, and it could have been a good movie but it's not, or a badly written movie that's so incredibly acted that it becomes a good movie because of the actor, But so I was not the greatest actress because I was very over-the-top animated, but I was also a kid. And as I got older, I knew that I was not acting like that anymore. I would never do that. I would be very with the sound, very quiet, which is what they do. Now that I've been on the set all those years and seeing others, I understand. But I think most people think when they're going into acting, or when I say to them, would you be willing to be in a film? They automatically get nervous and think, well, they've never taken acting lessons. That's the best thing to me. I would hate to hire someone who's taken an acting lesson, because that means they're like a showman. You want real. That's what grabs people. That's what they're not getting, in a lot of the movies now, which is why we all love the more original stuff, like the things on Netflix and the things that we're seeing now, the reality shows, because they are more real. It's just too bad that we can't always demand the best possible actors when it comes to things. But never think you're not an actor because you've never been in something. Many times you have to untrain someone. As my old acting coach used to say, his name is Milton, and that's what this story is about. So I was researching acting classes, and I was thinking, I want to go somewhere that's going to teach me, because I was always okay being funny, and I can ad-lib, and I'll never run out of things to say. I can MC, I can host, anything. But when it comes to a dramatic scene, if I would have to make myself cry, I can't make myself cry. It's not something I can do, because I have a hard time being vulnerable. Not that maybe I could now, I don't know. But it's not something I've even tried. I've always really been more cast as a funny girl and character acting and funny stuff. But it was always hard for me, and I wanted to be able to have that spectrum, to be able to go there. Because it wasn't just in acting that I had a problem being vulnerable. It was also in life. I wanted to get over that, and I felt like this acting teacher that I had gone to see, named Milton, at an acting school. I won't say the name of the place because I don't want to put them down. And I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just talking about the people I was working with at the time there. And everybody in that business they're the way they are, And nobody's looking out for anybody else because they need to get a break, or it's very rare if they do. So long story. I went to this acting school, which I loved. Right away, I didn't like the people, of course, but I wasn't comfortable with show business people in that way. They can be not so nice. But there were some great and very talented people there. I was put in a master class because of my experiences in acting. And there were other people in the class, Jeffrey Tambor, who's in the movie Transgender, or whatever that show is now, that award-winning show, the Larry Shandling show he used to be on. He was one of the acting teachers, but he was just a guest. He wasn't really the same as the other guy. Milton Casellas trained in the Actors Studio with Robert Duvall and Robert De Niro and all those guys. He was an incredible acting teacher. He would get up there. He would get you up there. You would do a monologue, and he would just know the words to say that almost like you wouldn't hear those words unless God was talking to you, and you would feel like your whole soul split open, and like suddenly you had the answer to why you had always been like that, and why you had always been a prisoner to this thing where you couldn't do this and you couldn't show that feeling. And people would like end up in like a ball on the floor, like crying, not because he put them down, but because he exposed them to themselves. He had this way of doing it. So all I wanted to do was get up. I would be able to act again. I would be able to act in that way. Vulnerability, I'd be able to show that maybe, something would be solved in me. And then throughout life, I would be more like someone like Milton, who was like brave in their spirit and taking more chances and just, allowing themselves to feel that love and just take a chance. If you get hurt, you get hurt. I was always, trying not to be vulnerable without even realizing. So I wanted to take that class. Long story short, I got in the class, and I never really could get to Milton. There was always these people in the way, like this whole staff, and they would ask you very personal questions about do you take medication, do you this, do you that, all these things you really don't understand why they were asking. And then they would say things like, well, you really shouldn't, even if someone is giving you that for depression, you don't need to do that, you're going to learn that from Milton, blah, blah, blah. And Milton was a very inspiring person. The problem was that what it was really about in order to get to Milton was something else. For me, at least. I'm just talking about my experience at that time. I'm not saying now. But, at a time, we started to find out that in the workbook, which a lot of people had been with Milton for years, and he was incredible. This didn't do anything to his ability, and he still was a great acting coach, was that there were certain themes that were laced through it from Scientology, because Milton had gotten involved with Scientology at some point when he had recovered from drug addiction years before, when all those actors were in their 20s and everything, using methamphetamines and everything. So Scientology helped many of them to get off of it. The problem was that it was about something else, really. I couldn't get to Milton, and I didn't realize why. Every month, I was spending $300 of money I didn't have with part-time, waitressing jobs, this, that, and the other thing, to try and go into the course, so that one day they would say, Jessica, you can do a monologue. And then I would get up there and have this experience with Milton, and he would see me, and he would see what's wrong with my acting, and he would tell me the secret, and it would just break me down, and I would be a whole new person. But every month went by, and they would never give me a chance. They kept telling me I wasn't a student yet, and I couldn't roll over. I was just kind of a watching student. So would you believe I was a frickin' watching student for 11 months? At $300 a month, where I never got up in front of Milton? Like, what was I learning? I was learning from what he was doing, but I wasn't making that change in myself. I wasn't going to benefit from that in my own acting until I got up there. So I tried to see Milton. I wrote him letters, but I could never do it unless getting through this other guy and then the other guy. So long story short, I was very frustrated. I was very upset. I used to go up there and talk about it. I can't believe this. Why isn't he giving me a chance? One day I got up to go to him, and I said, well, I want to be this. He said, look, I was chubby at the time. I've been very overweight in my life, too. And he said to me, you're a character actress. Don't bother with the leading lady roles. Go find the script from The Rose Tattoo or whatever. The character actor, the friend. That's what you are. And you could turn that into an incredible role that you can get noticed in. But that's what you are. Go take those and go. Like, he really didn't have time for me. So after a while, one of the women who was, like, very, into the whole scene there, had been there for years, one day, she said to me, do you want to spend the day with me? I was like, oh, wow, I'm going to have a friend here, finally. And she said, I have to go down to the Scientology mansion in Beverly Hills or West Hollywood, wherever it was. She goes to pick up some stuff. Come with me. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And I'm thinking in my head, okay, I've heard things about Scientology, but I've always wanted to see it. Like, I'm going to this mansion. Like, I've heard it's beautiful. Well, it was the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. But everyone that worked there was wearing these uniforms. They all matched. Long story short, when I walked in there, they started, immediately we were separated, me from my friend. She walked in a different direction. I was somehow moved with a whole mass group of people, like as if they were moving and I was moving with them. And I ended up like in front of a desk where the person was saying, we'd like to give you a free chance to do this e-meter, and you can, see what it is. It's free, and then we'll just tell you like what we find about your past. And I was always interested in that stuff, like I told you guys, with psychology. So I said, okay, why not? Whatever. They're not going to be able to get me if they are a cult or whatever. I'm not, hypnotizable or whatever. I don't fall for that stuff. And I'll be able to know. So I took the class at the thing, and it was free. And I ended up back in front of that desk again with the herd of people with the same outfits, moving me in there. So you had this, you had that, where you really need to work on yourself. You've got big problems. You have huge blocks that are impeding on your success. We can help you here. I said, well, what do you guys do? Well, we offer courses, this, that, and the other thing. But the first thing we start with is this course. It's not that much money. It's this, that, and the other thing. And I was pressured into it. So I took the course. But I took the course to really see, can this do anything for me? And it was like Dick and Jane, it was like a workbook, like, a 2-year-old workbook. Dick and Jane Bower, Dick's dad yelled, and they're trying to reprogram your brain, which is a great concept. I really liked it a lot. So I thought it was fun, but it was kind of, wasn't really helping me in any profound way yet. I was done with that course. I was trying to leave the building. Again, I was not allowed to leave the building. Really, technically, first I was asked to go back into that room, and I said no. I had to go, and I would come back, and I was really going to come back. But it was this weird pressure that started to make me feel off-put, and they moved me back, and I ended up in front of that desk again. And the woman was saying, okay, so now that you've taken that course and we have all these problems, you're never going to get anywhere unless you do the next step. And I'm like, well, what is the next step? And she said, well, you told us you're on like anti-anxiety pills and antidepressants from your doctor. That's very bad for you, and drugs are this and drugs are that. I said, well, I never thought about it as drugs. And they were right in a way about that too. But, medically they shouldn't be giving that advice because they don't know how crazy I am or what, right? So they said that I would need to take this cleanse, which was going to be like $5,000, which was $5,000 more than I had, to get your whole system detoxed from every single unhealthy food you've eaten, every single, cigarette you've had, and every single medication you've taken. It'll only be $5,000. So I said to the woman, that sounds like a great thing. Oh my God, I would love that, because I really would. Like, who wouldn't love that? It's like a freaking spa. But I don't have $5,000. She's like, that's okay. There's got to be ways. Well, what about your rent? I'm like, well, I pay blah, blah, blah in rent, and then I have nothing left. She's like, well, that's the point. Obviously, you don't have your priorities straight. And she started manipulating me like an abusive boyfriend. So I said to her, are you saying to me, as I'm sitting here, let me just get this straight, that because I'm choosing to pay my rent, you think that I should put that money towards Scientology and not pay rent, therefore having no place to live? Because if I don't, that would mean I don't have my priorities straight and I don't want success. And basically that's what she was saying. And it was right there that I realized what they do. And that's when I left. So when I started to leave, I called her out, which I shouldn't have done. I said, oh, that's very interesting. And I looked at her and she looked at me. She knew what I was thinking. And I said, listen, let me get out of here because I have an appointment to go to. Well, she started following me out. Everyone was following me out. I started receiving phone calls and everything. People were circling my house. It was pretty crazy. But back at the Beverly Hills school that I was in, the first day I'd gone to Scientology and I was back at the class before this whole thing happened. I just had taken the first e-meter thing. The main guy who always was telling me that I wasn't ready to roll over as a student approached me when I was smoking a cigarette outside, and he said to me, hey Jessica, I heard you're really making progress. I said, you're kidding, I haven't even been able to do a scene with anybody. He's like, no, I heard about some progress you're making, that I think you're really getting close now to being a student. And I'm like, what did I do? And he's looking at me with this big smile. He's like, no, I heard about what you did this weekend. I'm like, well, what did I do this weekend? I'm like, I didn't do any acting this weekend. And I'm looking at him and he's smiling, and all of a sudden it hit me. I said, are you talking about the fact that I went to the Scientology mansion? And he just was like, I think you're really making big progress. We told Milton about it, blah, blah. I was like, oh my God. So that's what this is about. And this guy was so talented. I said, he's such a brave guy. And he's involved in something that would be pressuring people like that and everything, the way they were doing to me. And I started to realize when you spoke to them, they had, and I'm not saying there aren't exceptions, and maybe it's changed. Maybe that was just a group of people. But it was my experience with Scientology. It made me very uncomfortable. And a lot of the people in the class, I started to realize when they gave answers, they were almost like scripts that were taught to them by Scientology, and they had the same exact words, the same exact response, the same exact expression, with not too much emotion. It was just, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't have good principles, but I felt like those people were losing who they were, and they were just simply becoming workers for the cause, which was Scientology. And whether or not it had great things about it, and it did a lot for a lot of people, it also had some very bad things, and it was about money and what they would do and the extent that they would go to possibly, I don't know if people spoke out, as you can see with Leah Ramini, who's very brave, and others. There were other things going on behind closed doors that I never got close enough to see, so I won't discuss. But, it was a very, uncomfortable thing. And I've read the book Dianetics. It's a great book. It has great points, and Scientology has great points, and some great people in it. It's just, when it becomes too much about money and the place and where you can't talk about it in secrets, there's something wrong. You know what I'm saying? Now, there are sects that I'm sure are good of it. I'm not judging those. I'm simply talking about my personal experience. And that was in the early 90s. So a friend of mine the other day was saying, I was thinking about, taking a course in Scientology because I read Dianetics, and I said, it really is a great thing. You could even probably get the books and work on them and look at the principles of what they're saying. Or you can go there and see if you see what I'm saying. But it becomes where if someone's even your friend and they're a Scientologist. So they called me after I left there and said that I couldn't pay the rent thing because they were worried about, I guess, what I was going to say. So they said, look, we've been thinking about you because we really care about you. Like, really? Give me a break. Yeah, sure you care about me. And so they said, we're willing to offer you a job here at Scientology and you can live here. Free of charge in the mansion. You can live in the mansion. I said, you're kidding. They said, that way you don't have to worry about paying for the courses. You can just work for the courses and you don't have to worry about the rent. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, oh my God. You know, this is before I knew it was bad. And I said, well, like, let me ask you some questions. I said, like, well, what is that? What are the rules? Like, what are the things that are different, like, when you live there? I mean, you know, let's say my friend comes to visit me. She's like, oh, no, your friend can't come and visit you. I'm like, really? She's like, unless they're a Scientologist. I'm like, well, okay, but what if I, like, have a friend over after we go out to eat or whatever? She's like, no, you can't have anyone over unless it's in the Scientology community. We really do ask that you don't, you know, really, you know, socialize or fraternize outside of the Scientology community. So you see what I'm saying? It's like you're being, where you're just only indoctrinated into that group, and then you're in that bubble. It's just like, even if it was a good thing, when you're in one environment with only that in your ear over and over again, you start to, whether it's a good or bad environment, you start to change accordingly. So that's my Scientology story. And, you know, it didn't end well between me and Scientology, but it wasn't a big to-do because I wasn't going to make a big to-do about it. And as I'm saying right now, I can't really comment about whether or not that was the whole place, etc. But years later, I just want to say that Milton Casellas, I looked him up to see what happened to him and where he was, and I was so devastated to read that he had passed away. But I did read something incredible about him, and I knew, did I tell you, he was brave as hell. And it didn't fit into me that he would be a part of something like that, because he was so not like that, and he couldn't be manipulated. So I saw that at the very end, he realized what Scientology was about, and he stood up to them. And he made a break from them, and he was blackballed. And every single person, apparently, that had worshipped him there, in those acting schools and others, and very few people even continued to speak to him. He was totally isolated and thrown out of the community, and it destroyed him. And I believe he died of a broken heart. I think that's what I was reading. But one thing I could say about Milton Casellas is thank you, because he was brave as hell. He taught me more than anyone in my life, aside from my father and Dennis and some others. You know, he's one of the main figures, even though he never sat and spoke to me personally in that way. Watching him and knowing that in the end, he stood up to that, no matter how huge it was, no matter how long. That meant that he was brave as hell, and I'm glad that I crossed paths with him. So postcards from the bottom, everybody. I'll be back later.